Castle was by far the most complex and significant operation in the short but impressive history of nuclear testing, and in my opinion, absolutely vital to national security and the security of the free world.
At the end of June in 2005, I said goodbye to friends and family in North Carolina and took a one-way flight across the country. After a couple weeks sharing a tiny room in a Berkeley co-op, I got a gig working on a documentary film, which introduced me to some of the coolest people I've met in San Francisco, in addition to 3 very special guys, Japanese Buddhist monks, whom I called Keigaku, Miyazaki-san, and Keiji. Communicating with them was time-consuming, yet incredibly exciting, and I learned a lot from them about a language, culture, and religion that I previously knew little about. I really grew to admire their energy, knowledge, and perspective. It was a particular conversation with Keiji about America's first hydrogen bomb test in the Pacific in 1954 that led me to start making plans to shoot my first film. I quickly became interested in learning about the displaced indigenous people in the Bikini Atoll and the contaminated people on the Daigo Fukuyu Maru, a Japanese ship fishing 160 kilometers off the atoll at the time of the Bravo explosion. I was already frustrated from my own experience scrolling through the abundance of no-budget production crew postings on San Francisco's Craigslist, so I decided not to post one of my own. A year earlier, I took her skydiving for her 50th birthday, so I guess it shouldn't have been a surprise that my mom was up for the adventure. Thus, we were a 2-woman crew, having about 20 pounds on most of the men we saw, and a combined Japanese vocabulary of 5 words. We decided to meet at the Konczal airport in the Wakayama Prefecture in the eastern part of Japan, where my friend Keiji would pick us up.
Last 5 miles.
This was where the Daigo Fukuyu Maru was built. The Bikini Atoll, or Bikini Kansho in Japanese, consists of 36 islands, including Bikini Island, the largest and northeasternmost island. It was discovered by the Spanish in the 1600s and administered by the Japanese from the early 1900s until a battle there near the end of World War II, when the United States took control over all of the Marshall Islands. Commodore Ben H. Wyatt asked the roughly 200 Micronesian people on Bikini Island to leave their homes so that the U.S. could start conducting nuclear bomb tests there in 1946. They were relocated multiple times for, as Wyatt said, the good of mankind and to end all world wars. Although 2-piece bathing suits had been around for some time, It was days after the first peacetime nuclear bomb exploded in the Bikini Atoll that Louis Réard, a French engineer, brought another sensation to a poolside show at the Piscine Molitor in Paris. On July 5, 1945, a nude dancer named Micheline Bernardini modeled a skimpy two-piece with a G-string back that Réard claimed to have invented. He named it the Bikini, after the atoll that was also receiving considerable press and that would come to experience more than 20 nuclear weapons tests between 1946 and 1958.
This photograph was taken from an airplane at 50 miles. The width of the fireball at this time, about 3 seconds after detonation, was 4 miles. The frame size of the picture is 6 by 8 miles.
On March 1st, 1954, the first hydrogen bomb was detonated in the Castle Bravo test.
The top of the fireball at this time, 40 seconds after detonation, was 5 miles above sea level.
The bomb wasn't expected to be as powerful as it was, and the weather predictions were inaccurate, so the danger zone wasn't correctly marked. This hydrogen bomb, 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bombs dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, contaminated the people on the atoll, many hundreds of people on the other Marshall Islands, and at least 100 fishing boats in nearby waters. Several islands had to be completely evacuated. The Daigo Fukuyomaru, or Lucky Dragon No. 5, was a Japanese ship fishing for tuna 160 kilometers from the Bikini Atoll at the time of the blast. The boat returned to the Yaizu harbor 2 weeks later, and the 23 passengers were diagnosed with massive amounts of radiation exposure and checked into the Tokyo University Hospital. The contaminated Daigo Fukuyomaru led to the First World Conference Against Atomic and Hydrogen Bombs in Hiroshima in 1955, and spread the campaign to ban the use of these bombs from Nagasaki and Hiroshima to the rest of Japan and around the world. In 1939, fearing that the Nazis would develop nuclear weapons first, Albert Einstein sent President Roosevelt a letter asking that the United States study nuclear fission for military purposes. However, after the incident in the Bikini Atoll, Einstein and British philosopher Lord Bertrand Russell issued the Russell-Einstein Manifesto, warning about the danger of the escalating arms race and contamination from nuclear tests on a global scale. Fearing that this anti-nuclear movement would turn into an anti-American movement, the United States quickly negotiated a settlement paying about $15 million to the Japanese for injuries and damage due to the blast. Although each crew member received a portion of this money, they were not entitled to financial or medical support from the Japanese government. Over 10 years later, an exhibition hall was resurrected on Yameneshima, the Island of Dreams, in Tokyo Bay, as a symbol of hope for the people who were still pushing for the disarmament of weapons of mass destruction.
All of those exposed were taken to Konczal, where complete physical examinations were carried out. Every effort was made to assure their comfort and well-being. Fallout on Bikini temporarily rendered that atoll unusable.
In 1968, the United States determined Bikini safe to live on and started returning Bikinians to their homes in the early 1970s. However, in 1978, it was discovered that the islanders had dangerous levels of strontium-90, and they were again removed from their homeland. Since 1956, the U.S. has paid $759 million to Marshallese Islanders as reparation for the nuclear testing that was conducted there. Very few of the American military and civilians who received high amounts of radiation during the Castle Bravo test have been compensated. Atolls consist of coral algal reefs, usually surrounding lagoons. And the Bikini Atoll's lagoon and its sunken warships from bomb tests is now one of the highest rated scuba diving destinations worldwide. Americans see references to the Bikini Atoll and the nuclear bomb testings there through cartoons like Nickelodeon's SpongeBob SquarePants. Few realize that the word bikini is connected to an island where momentous events took place that greatly impacted many people alive today, and maybe indirectly, all of our lives. Since the bombings in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, over 2,000 nuclear weapons have been detonated for demonstration and testing purposes. The only countries known to have detonated a nuclear weapon are the United Kingdom, United States, France, the Soviet Union, North Korea, China, India, and Pakistan. Most of America's nuclear bomb testing has taken place at the Nevada test site, a mere 65 miles northwest of Las Vegas. Nearly 1,000 bombs have been detonated there. Operation Divine Strike, a weapons test originally scheduled for 2006 at the site, was rescheduled for this year. Congress was hesitant to fund this operation, regardless of President Bush's support for the test. After much opposition to Divine Strike, it was announced this past February that the test was permanently canceled. I've now been in San Francisco for 2 years, and I'm still in love with the city. I live a few blocks from the bay, and not 10 miles from the Hunters Point Naval Shipyard in South San Francisco. 14 ships used in the nuclear testing at the Bikini Atoll were brought to this shipyard for decontamination. From 1946 until 1969, the Naval Radiological Defense Laboratory operated in secret at the Hunters Point Naval Shipyard, responsible for things like cleaning up the strontium-90 and cesium-137 on the badly contaminated ships, and conducting research on exposure to radioactive fallout. A proposal published in a March issue of the San Francisco Chronicle this year showed the city's plans for building housing, artist studios, and a new 49ers football stadium on the land that was formerly the naval shipyard. Land that Lennar Corporation has agreed to clean up before building on. In Hunters Point, the incidences of both breast and cervical cancer are twice as high as in the rest of San Francisco. And remarkably, San Francisco has a higher rate of breast cancer than any metropolitan city in the world.
全部貸す。はい。
There is an ethical responsibility that comes with power, and we are all in a position where our actions could affect the lives of those halfway around the world, or much closer than we expect. Every day we make choices that affect the environment in which we all live, causing effects that don't necessarily adhere to the borders we've created. Most fortunate. He's fortunate. Be careful for things like diarrhea. Oh my god.